I'm going to begin section 2 of the foundational overview. But before we begin this section, I want to ask you all some questions. Why the Common Core? Why do we need the Common Core? Why the change over to the Common Core? And why change the way we're teaching currently? Well, hopefully by the end of this section, you all will be able to answer that question or those set of questions. And along with these questions here on the screen. These two questions are, how are the Common Core State Standards in Math organized? And how do the Common Core State Standards in Math develop across the grade levels? So we're really kind of looking at how they're organized and how they're consistent throughout the grade levels, and also how they're being developed across the grade levels. Why does this all make sense? How are they organized in a way that helps us teach better? So, in this particular section, you're going to see a theme running across most of the slides, and that is teach less, learn more. We want to be able to teach less, but we want our students to be able to learn more. So we're really going to kind of get into their depth of knowledge and their level of understanding throughout these particular standards. But before we begin, we're going to talk about the Common Core State Standards, what they are first. The Common Core State Standards are aligned with college and work expectations. They are clear, understandable, and consistent. They include rigorous content and application of knowledge through higher order thinking skills. They build upon strengths and lessons of current state standards. They are informed by other top performing countries so that our students are able to compete and succeed in a global economy. And that's a lot for what our Common Core State Standards are. So as you think about some of those questions you asked about in the beginning, or you were asking yourself in the beginning, hopefully that sheds a little light on why we need the Common Core. So, we've gone over what the Common Core is. Now let's look at what the Common Core Standards do not do. They do not define intervention methods or support materials for students well below or well above the grade level. They do not define a range of supports appropriate for English language learners or students with special needs. And they do not dictate curriculum or teaching methods. So now, we want to look at standards for mathematical content. But before we begin this part right here, I want you all to think about what you already know about standards, clusters, and domains. I'm going to ask you all now, this is your chance to participate and for me to engage with you all a little bit. I want to ask you what you know about them already. So who can tell me what standards are? Raise your hand. All right, over there. Standards are what students understand and should be able to do. Very good. We've already covered standards before. What about clusters? All right, clusters. Yes. Clusters are closely group related standards. Very good. All right. And domains. What is a domain? Over there. Okay, domains are groups of larger related standards. Excellent. Excellent. So let's take a look up here at this slide again. This slide is organization by domains and concept categories. So here you see K through 5, 6 through 8, and high school. And you see the domains and the concept categories throughout elementary school and middle school and high school. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. Again, teach less, learn more is what we're focusing on here. So as we move through the grade level standards, you're going to notice that there's greater focus and there's greater coherence. Quote here on the screen says, "It is important to recognize that fewer standards are no substitute for focused standards." So we want to be able to focus, not just on having fewer standards, but we want to be able to focus on those standards so students can master what we're teaching them. So because you've already done that, I want you all to now do this next task. We're going to turn to our grade level partners or at your tables, and I want you to discuss just in a minute or two, what you've noticed about the standards, the clusters, and the domains. So go ahead and do that for about a minute or two, and then I'm going to come back to this slide here. Now I want you all to think about those conversations that you were just having at your tables, and I want you to look up here at this example of a grade level standard. So now you can kind of see what you were talking about and what you were discussing at your tables. It's kind of consistent all throughout the grade levels, or it is consistent. You have the domain here at the top with the number followed by a letter. Up here in bold print, you have the standard that the students should be working on. And in the middle, you have the cluster. Here's where you have those largely related categories or those groups here. And you can see things here like distinguish between defining attributes and so on. You see what the students should be working on there. All right, I want you to take just a quick minute and I want you to read this quote to yourself. All right, who can point out 2 words that you noticed about this particular quote? Just 2 words that stand out to you. There's no right or wrong here. I just want to see what you noticed about this quote. There's a lot of great language here, but 2 words. All right, 1 word, yep. Sequential, I heard, and hierarchical. Hierarchical. Very good. So we're looking at sequence and hierarchy throughout the standards. That's what we're focusing on here. And down here, the learning pathway should be that students who already know something, what they should be expected to learn next, or what students should be learning next. So we're going to see this progression throughout some examples of standards that I'm going to show you now. So let's take a look at the K through 2 example first. Here, it says kindergarten students who already know how to identify and describe shapes should next be able to reason with shapes and their attributes in grades 1 and 2. So what does that mean? They're moving progressively from identifying and describing to reasoning with shapes. Here are some of the questions that you should be asking yourselves at your grade level. Does this statement infer that the standards and the grades are the same? Well, most of you all have figured, no, they're not the same standard, but there's a progression. But the questions that you really want to ask yourselves, especially amongst each other and the other grade levels, are how are they similar? How are they different? How are they building upon what students have already learned in the previous grade? Let's take a look at the next example. Here's a grade 6 through 8 example. In grade 6, students who learn to apply and extend previous understandings of multiplication and division to divide multiplications by fractions should next be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide rational numbers in grade 7. So you can see the sequence and you can see the hierarchy where students are building upon that next standard. And again, you're asking yourselves, how are the grade 6 standards similar to the grade 7 standards? And how are students building on what they have already learned from even grade level 5? So you're kind of building upon, or you're not kind of building, you really are building upon what students have learned from the last level. And here's a grade 8 through 12 example. Grade 8 students who learn to use functions to model relationships between quantities should next be able to build a function that models a relationship between 2 quantities in high school mathematics. So, again, you're asking yourselves those standards, or how they're different and how they're similar, and how do they build on what students have already learned in grade 8 before they come to high school. So these are the kinds of conversations that you want to have at your grade levels. These are the kinds of conversations that you want to have among your grade level partners and the people that you partner up with and teach with. We are focusing on teaching more, teaching less, and learning more for the students in their respective grade levels. And we'll stop right there, take a quick break, and we'll come back with the next section. Thank you.